Parker Schnabel is now one of the biggest and most powerful landowners in the Klondike.
We've spent the last 5 years looking for a massive project and we just got one. I should be stoked.
Something just happened on Gold Rush that no one saw coming. Parker Schnabel made a discovery so massive, so unexpected, it could ignite the biggest modern gold rush in over 100 years. We're talking about a strike potentially worth over $50 million in untapped gold, hidden beneath a site everyone thought was dried up. According to early scans, Parker's crew may have hit a 300-foot stretch of ultra-rich pay dirt, the kind of ground that could produce 1,500 ounces of gold or more. That's over $3 million in gold from a single cut, and the equipment was barely warmed up. Experts on site were stunned. Miners nearby are already trying to stake claims. And the old maps? Turns out they missed something big, something game-changing. This isn't just a lucky strike. It's the kind of find that rewrites history. Before we dig into the full story, smash that like button, hit subscribe. Trust me, you're going to want to see how deep this goes. This isn't just gold, it's a gold rush reborn. They thought it was just another day at the claim, another push for gold. But the ground had other plans. Mud clung to boots like glue. The rain turned trenches into quicksand. Then the excavator locked up, frozen mid-swing, frozen solid, as if gripped by the earth itself. The crew circled the bucket, eyes wide, breath caught in their throats. Inside, something smooth, pale, too perfect to be a rock, ivory, a mammoth tusk, still locked in ice that hadn't seen the sun in 10,000 years. One tusk became two, then three, and more. Bones, fossilized and pristine, began surfacing, turning a gold hunt into an archaeological revelation. The air grew heavy with disbelief and wonder, but Parker kept his face stone cold. There was gold beneath this land, yes, but these ancient bones whispered a different story. A story of a frozen graveyard buried beneath the permafrost. Parker could have sold those tusks for millions, could have made a fortune overnight. But he didn't. He buried them again, hiding the truth beneath crates marked fuel storage. To the world, it was just another shipment. To Parker, it was a secret too dangerous to share. Word spread quietly. Tony Beats and others started pulling up strange relics nearby, jawbones the size of a man's chest, shards of bone and ivory unlike anything catalogued. The ground wasn't just gold-rich, it was history-rich, a prehistoric vault frozen in time. Then Parker left Australia, not for rest, but for perspective. Standing beside the replica of the legendary Welcome Stranger nugget, the largest gold nugget ever found, he felt the weight of gold's true meaning. It wasn't about ounces or dollars, it was about chasing legends, about rewriting history, about finding the impossible. He returned with fire in his eyes, ready to dig deeper. But the land he'd left behind was restless. The Wolf Cut, a spot he'd targeted for millions, started to betray him. Walls collapsed without warning. Machines vanished beneath shifting earth. Then came the flood. A hidden tunnel cracked open, releasing 10 million gallons of icy water that swallowed pumps and stalled excavators. The earth itself seemed to fight back, swallowing their chances as fast as they clawed for them. And Parker wasn't there to see it. Chaos erupted in his absence. The fight was no longer just for gold. It was for survival. Every broken cable, every failing pump, every frozen engine was a countdown ticking toward the end of the season and the end of their shot at fortune. The gold lay 30 feet below, a frozen, muddy nightmare. They cut through ice and water, racing against time and the coming winter that would freeze everything solid. But then, against every odd, They struck gold. Not specks, not flakes, but streaks. Rich pay dirt that poured out over 8,000 ounces, worth $14 million. Joy surged through the camp. But Parker's grin was tight. $15 million in debt still haunted every breath. Fuel, machinery, wages. Tyson, his right-hand man, hauled a 90,000-pound wash plant uphill overnight, each hour a gamble, with no margin for error. Nature wasn't done with them yet. Pumps ran round the clock. Mud boiled. The gold was real, but the price was brutal. They drained 10 million gallons, only to watch it flood again. Then, the wash plant began to sink, dragging their hopes with it. The crew threw logs, gravel, and every ounce of grit into the mud, buying time against total collapse. Weeks of chaos stretched into exhaustion. When the gold was finally weighed, 8,118 ounces lay in their hands, but the season was far from won. Parker faced the mountain not with triumph, but with the raw fatigue of a man who had stared death, disaster, and debt in the face, and lived to dig another day. But in mining, survival is never enough. You need a win so big, it silences every ghost. That's when the whispers started. A place called Wolf Cut. The map said it was loaded. Millions in untouched pay dirt, supposedly trapped beneath frozen layers of earth, ice, and time. Parker zeroed in on it like a predator. Confident, aggressive, and 100% sure this was the jackpot that would erase their losses in one clean sweep. But the ground had other plans. It began with a rumble. Not the kind that makes you stop digging, just enough to make the crew look over their shoulders. Then the walls gave. One by one, they started collapsing inward. Not with a crash, but a slow, creeping shift, like the ground was breathing in reverse. And then came the water. First a trickle, then a surge. It punched through from nowhere, a pressurized torrent rising from a tunnel no one even knew was there. An old, collapsed shaft, or natural cave maybe, but it didn't matter. The dig site vanished in minutes. Machines got swallowed. Pumps choked. One excavator slipped into the abyss like it had never existed. The ground just opened. 10 million gallons of freezing groundwater surged in before anyone could react. It wasn't a flood. It was a siege. Pumps fought to keep up, but every gallon removed was replaced by another. The crew tried doubling the hoses, bringing in diesel units from miles away. Didn't matter. The hole refused to drain like it had become something alive, something angry. And Parker? He wasn't even there. He was up north, chasing down parts for the new plant, leaving Tyson to manage the pit. And Tyson fought like hell. Sandbags, backup power, even bringing in a diver to inspect the submerged pump heads. But nothing could stop it. For hours, then days, the team ran on caffeine, adrenaline, and desperation. They watched their million-dollar shot dissolve into a watery grave. By the time Parker returned, the damage was done. The Wolf Cut site looked like a battlefield, caved-in walls, abandoned gear, diesel fumes hanging heavy in the air, and in the middle of it, a crater filled with dark, ice-cold water, deeper now than before. But Parker didn't flinch. He stood over that sunken pit and made a choice most wouldn't. They'd dig anyway, through the water, through the frozen mud, through hell if they had to. The gold layer, what they'd come for, sat 30 feet below the surface. Not inches, not reachable with shovels or luck. 30 feet of frozen overburden, half of it now waterlogged. And every time they dug, the walls wept. Pumps failed, buckets cracked, excavators stalled. They were working against nature in her rawest form. And still, they pushed deeper. Crews cut trenches by headlamp, chainsaws buzzing through ice at midnight, while winds howled off the Yukon hills. Fuel lines froze, hydraulics locked up. At one point, a dozer sank nose-first into slush and nearly took the operator with it. Every fix spawned 2 new failures. Every problem grew teeth. Tyson stayed in the cab so long, his boots froze to the floor. Mitch, the mechanic, slept next to the generator with a wrench under his pillow. They weren't just mining gold, they were fighting a war, and the ground was winning. And overhead, winter gathered like a storm cloud with no sky. The countdown had begun, temperatures dropping, daylight shrinking. Every hour they spent digging was another they couldn't spend hauling. And still, no gold. But then, quietly, almost mockingly, it started to appear. Not flakes, not dust, streaks of pure, rich pay dirt, the kind miners dream about and rarely live to see. And just like that, the fight changed. Now it wasn't just about survival, it was about extraction. They were in the zone. And if they could move fast enough, deep enough, wide enough, they could win. Over 8,000 ounces came out in the next run. $14 million worth of Yukon gold, hauled out under the shadow of snow clouds and the echo of collapsing ice. But celebration, there wasn't time for that, because Parker, the kid who'd once begged fuel on credit, now stared down a debt bigger than any win could cover. $15 million owed to fuel suppliers, trucking outfits, labor, permits, food, repairs. The gold barely covered the ledger, and the meter was still running, so they doubled down. Tyson took the biggest gamble of his career, moving the 90,000-pound wash plant. Big red, uphill, through soft frost, under freezing sleet, and over ground that had already given way once. No crane, no margin. Just brute force, calculated madness, and a 2-hour window before the sun dipped below the ridge. And it worked, barely. But nothing about this season felt like winning. Every ounce of gold came with an ounce of pressure. The more they pulled, the more they had to spend. More fuel, more repairs, more risk. The mine had become a living machine, and it demanded blood to keep running. They had the gold, but they weren't rich. They were just deeper in the game. And winter hadn't even touched down yet. Then the mine turned hostile. The ground didn't just fight back, it struck. Beneath their boots, frozen ice veins shattered into flowing rivers. Pumps screamed non-stop. Mud clung to every machine like a curse, and the men were barely holding on. They had drained 10 million gallons of water, twice, and still the pit refilled like a living, breathing monster, as if the land itself refused to give up its gold. And then it happened again. Another blow. The wash plant, the very heart of the operation, began to tilt. Not slow, not subtle, a lurch, a groan, then sinking. They had minutes to respond. Wood planks, steel beams, old tires, anything they could grab, were thrown under the collapsing frame. It was chaos, fists flying, boots stomping, voices shouting through radio static and wind. No room for error. If that plant went down, the entire season was done. Not just Parker's dream, not just a year's work. Millions. Gone. The crew didn't sleep that night, not one of them. They watched the wash plant as it held steady on a patchwork lifeline of grit and desperation. Some stared in silence. Others paced. It was like waiting for a bomb to go off. And then nothing. No explosion. No collapse. Just a grey, eerie calm that settled over camp like fog. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. By morning, the sky was pale and thin, the kind of dawn that doesn't promise anything. And that's when they saw it. The pile, gold, not dust, Not flakes, real chunks. Pay dirt thick with promise. But no one cheered, no high fives, just quiet. The kind of silence that comes after war. 8,118 ounces. Over $14 million pulled from the belly of hell. But $364,000 still riding on borrowed diesel and unpaid repairs. The numbers didn't match the pain. Parker's face didn't glow with victory, it tensed with calculation. The gamble had paid off, but barely. Every inch forward still pulled debt behind it like a shadow. There was no breathing room, just another race, another claim, another battlefield. And that's when Parker made the call. Dominion. Hot, brutal, dry terrain where nothing gives easy. A claim that breaks trucks and mines. But Parker didn't blink. He'd already stared down floods, collapses, and $15 million worth of debt. What was a little more? They didn't have days. They barely had hours. Tyson led the charge again. The man who never left the front lines. The wash plant had to move. Uphill. Fast. One wrong cable, one bad weld, and the entire structure could snap like a twig. Every piece mattered. The conveyor, the hopper, the shaker deck. No room for fatigue. No time to second guess. The crew moved like a unit under fire. Bolts flying, steel clanging, sweat burning through layers of dust. They didn't speak unless they had to. It was too late for small talk, too close to the edge. By sunrise, it stood, the plant, assembled, humming. Not perfect, but standing. And that was enough. Enough to dig. Enough to believe. For now. No one knew what lay beneath the Dominion dirt. It could be a mother lode or a grave. But Parker didn't care. He was already walking back toward the controls. Toward the next scoop. Because that's the thing about gold. It doesn't care what it cost you. It just sits there, waiting. And some men, they can't stop chasing it. But while Parker chased the next ounce, something else was chasing him. Just when the dust had finally started to settle around Parker's camp, a name echoed across the Yukon and flipped the gold mining world upside down. Todd Hoffman, the man who many thought had hung up his hard hat for good. But now he was back, and not quietly. No warning, no press release, just one massive move. A new mine, a new location, and a very public purchase that sent every rumor mill spinning. Word hit the camps like a punch to the gut. Todd had bought a claim deep in the Yukon, close to where it all began. Satellite maps lit up, YouTube flooded with speculation, and die-hard fans knew something was brewing. Todd wasn't just another miner. He was the flashpoint, the face of the first season. The man who convinced his crew to risk it all, back when mining reality TV was still finding its legs. He'd been mocked, praised, cheered, and jeered. But through it all, Todd brought something no one else could. Energy. Big, chaotic, unpredictable energy. For a while, that energy dimmed. His spin-off show, Hoffman Family Gold, had launched with promise, but ended quietly in 2024. No scandal, no big finale, just silence. Fans thought that was it, that the Hoffman dynasty had faded into memory, replaced by Parker's precision and Tony's fire. But then came the videos. Helicopter flyovers of untouched ridges. Time lapses of dozers carving veins in raw terrain. Mysterious captions like, "The storm returns, and we're not done." No explanation. Just Todd in silhouette, standing over vast stretches of land. And the speculation machine kicked into overdrive. Was this another mining venture? A full-blown series reboot? A network deal? The Yukon isn't cheap, and Todd never moved quietly. Investors had to be behind this, or maybe a production crew already filming in secret. Drone footage, hints of branding, clues buried in Instagram filters, the internet obsessed over every pixel. But behind the headlines, behind the dramatic shots and cryptic teasers, there was another figure, quiet, focused, and carrying a legacy not entirely his own. Mike Hoffman, the son who rarely spoke on camera, the one who didn't chase fame but inherited its spotlight anyway. For years, Mike was just Todd's kid. He drove the loader, fixed the wash plant, stayed out of drama. But now, with his father's shadow stretching across the Yukon again, Mike's role was changing. Fast. Mike had grown up on camera. He'd seen how quickly fortunes could rise, how fast crews could fall apart. And he knew better than anyone what came with a last name like Hoffman. The pressure wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It whispered, constantly, in the tone of his father's voice, in the way producers looked at him, in the expectations of fans who saw him as the next in line, not just to mine, but to entertain. And then, the accident. A wash plant, old and temperamental, gave way under stress. Metal twisted, a belt snapped, and a piece of machinery slammed into Mike's side. Nothing fatal, nothing that made headlines, but enough to shake things, enough to turn the camp cold. Todd wanted answers. Mike wanted space. Cameras were rolling, of course they were. But something about the way Mike stood up, brushing off the dust, said this wasn't just another gold rush moment, it was a fracture, a quiet one, but deep. Mike didn't yell. He didn't storm off. He just disappeared for a few days. No one knew where, but when he came back, he looked different, more focused, less tethered. People talk about the dual lives of miners, how they change when the camera's off. Mike's second life was no secret to locals. By day, he was hammering frozen earth. By night, he trained in medieval European martial arts, real sword fighting, not fantasy cosplay, chainmail, longswords, combat drills, discipline, control, balance. It wasn't an escape. It was a transformation. He didn't talk about it on camera. He didn't post flashy videos, but the training gave him something the mine never did. Clarity. In a world ruled by legacies, broken equipment, and unpredictable ice flows, swordsmanship was precise, honest, and brutally demanding. Some say Mike is cracking. Others say he's forging his own path, one swing at a time. Meanwhile, Todd's operation continues to swell. More equipment arrives. More posts go live. Helicopter shots zoom out further, revealing a landscape littered with possibility and pressure. Crews have started appearing again. Not faces we recognize, but there's movement, activity, noise. And for the first time in years, the Gold Rush community feels something unfamiliar, uncertainty. Because if Todd is coming back, that means the old energy, the chaos, the brotherhood, the fights, the comebacks, it's all coming too. But this time, it's different. This time, the stakes aren't just golden ratings, they're legacy. Parker's precision has become legendary. Tony's fire never faded. Rick still haunts the hills like a ghost from past glory. But Todd was always the storm. Unpredictable, raw, unfiltered. And now that storm is rolling back in. The question isn't whether he'll strike gold. The question is whether the Yukon can survive what's coming. Because in this world, gold doesn't just bring fortune, it brings war. If you've felt the tension, the power, the silence, and the storms building with every word, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. Is this Todd's final strike, or just the beginning of a whole new reckoning? Because trust this, something massive is coming, and no one, not even the legends, are safe.